future.
Well, I don't know if I really agree with that. I think to a certain extent that there's a valid argument that it's not the lower interest rates that made the bubble, but standards by which the money was lent that created the subprime crisis, and that it was more, of abuses of the system and the lack of regulation of the banks, requiring certain standards and litmus tests. But I'd like to go back. There's one other factor that I wanted to, bring up, so their viewers at least consider this also, is that the third item, you gave two reasons why. The third would be is the globalization of the free market. I mean, we were very successful. We brought down the Iron Curtain. We've got the former Soviet Union now on a free market basis with some adjustments that we're not so happy about. We've introduced the Chinese, to the free market. We have the Indians now that are dropping their things. So it seems to me that that's certainly a part of maybe one of the reasons that we don't necessarily fall into a recession, is that we have all this money that can pour in and all this commerce going on.
Yeah, a global healthy economy certainly can help things going forward. And but one of the things that maybe that I wanted to maybe share in terms of how do investors manage through these times, and I did want to share a couple of statistics. You do make a very good point that globalization will help us going forward. I think that's very possible. Again, it just makes sense that if there's more wealth around the world, that's just a healthy situation.
I mean, a good example I point out to you is Brazil, which has been exploding with economic growth. And it's because we just talked about comps, a company beating its prior year numbers. Well, the economies in South America, including Brazil, have been relatively small, but their populations are fairly substantial, and their resources are fairly substantial. So when the governments move to less protective free market types of economies, the room to grow is so great. And this is literally happening, in Eastern Europe. They, for instance, dropped restrictions. You can go on a URL pass to anywhere. You don't need a professional permit or a special passport. Those markets are opening. India, dramatic differences in dropping their anti-competitive behavior. So in years before, it's been the U.S. economy that's pulled the world out of recession, and now it seems that maybe this is one of the big success stories for globalization, that the U.S. economy lands soft.
Yeah, and that's what makes this cycle so interesting. I do want to share a couple things. Number one, I get questions a lot. If you watch, some of these, financial programs, or if you read the financial press, or read or watch the financial media, you have all these experts saying, well, are we at the bottom yet? And I just want to share a few statistics and, what are your strategies? And number one, that the average bear market from peak to trough takes about 11 to 13 months. And so if we peaked in October, when do you think this bear market will end if we use the average?
It would be by the end of this year.
So the point is that we probably have a little bit more time to find the bottom, and there's a reason for that too. It's because just at the top, the bears and the bulls fight it out, and the bears won here. That at the bottom, the bulls and the bears fight it out, and eventually the bulls will win.
One of the most interesting things about this that can be measured is in the short interest. Jeff, you were talking to me, over dinner last night about the state of the market as measured by how many people are adding to their short positions. And I think you came to a number of 51%.
No, similar to that, but basically what we do is I do a lot of work with Phil Erlanger, and he looks at the short intensity level of a sector. And so right now we've got 13 sectors out of 24 that have short intensity above 50%. And at the beginning of this year, we had no sectors with short intensity above 50%. And when we got the high in July, we were at 22 of the sectors above 50%. So we really have come off of that number. And the ability of short sellers to get too aggressive can potentially put a lot of fuel into the fire that gets the market going to the upside. So we're 5/8 to 3/4 full right now.
So for our viewers to understand, what we're saying is that oftentimes in a bear market, when the negative sentiment, the short interest gets to a peak, and everything looks the absolute worst, and that the bottom is going to fall out, simply by looking at the short interests across the board of the sectors, you can kind of figure out that we're getting in the area of the of the bottom. Of course, That's the scariest time to go ahead and invest
Well, short
in
sellers
stocks.
are notorious for being correct on companies, but being awful on their timing. Example, they shorted Boston Chicken, but they all got carried out before the company went bankrupt. They shorted Krispy Kreme, it ran too high. The great example we've had this last year has been Crocs. Crocs ran to ridiculous numbers and has come from $70 back down into the teens. And that's the nature of the beast. But to your point, we look at, Dan's a big fan of looking at various publications over the weekend. Last weekend, Barron's noted that Investors Intelligence Survey is at a 5-year low. Merrill Lynch does a cash allocation of its managers at an extreme high. We're getting lots of these anecdotal things out there saying that we're getting there.
Yeah.
So probably somewhere 6th, 7th inning.
Yeah, and that's part of the point that we want to make, is that this is the time you want to start. Hopefully, you raised a lot of cash at the top that you can now start deploying that. It normally takes a little while to find a bottom. I use that example of the housing stocks, that it takes a little while to find that bottom, then it needs to base, and then you can to break out of that. But that basing period is kind of important, because that's where the bulls and the bears fight it out, and that's pretty normal. And the same formations that you have at the top, like a double top, a triple top, a rounding top, a head and shoulders, you'll have exactly at the bottom. You'll have a bowl shape. You'll have a double bottom, a triple bottom. All the things that you see at the top, you'll see at the bottom. Those
Well, and to your point, this past week, the S&P 500 for the first time all year moved back above its 50-day moving average. We're not back above the 200-day moving average, but we're above the 50-day, and that's a very important and key statistic to watch.
And I think I'd like to point out that it's important to note that in the third year of a presidential cycle, that you have an up market, which was 2007, and then traditionally the fourth year is up on average, but kind of flat. So in a sense, we're kind of fitting the presidential cycle. The 25-year cycle, of course, with Phil Erlanger shows that we're looking for a bottom in the June area, and of course that's an average. Like
Well, to your note, the world is not happy with President Bush. Even being a diehard Republican, I'm not a fan of President Bush, and his popularity is down in the 20s or sometimes even the teens. And so whoever comes in is naturally going to have a higher popularity level, and that could also help get the dollar going.
Well, on that, we're going to have to move on. And Dan, thank you for joining our show this evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And I want to thank our viewers for tuning in this week. If you'd like more information on Dan's ideas, please come to our website at www.wxel.org. And please take a few minutes and submit your comments and suggestions. We're always looking for ideas for the shows, and always interested in hearing what guests you'd like to see. I'm James DeGiorgia.
And I'm Jeff Garbaz for The Market Guys. Good night.
To receive a copy of your favorite Wealth and Wisdom episode, or if you have a question or comment about our program, please feel free to write us at Wealth and Wisdom, care of WXEL, P.O. Box 6607, West Palm Beach, Florida 33405. Or call us at 1-800-915-9935, extension 4477. We look forward to hearing from you soon.